誰為愛世人願捨身？這禮物化作活存的心靈。幸福是接受和活出這禮物的真諦，教我學習愛到痛時就如遇見主。人一生最如緊，豔陽縱使多耀眼，如若沒愛，彷彿天空阻隔了光線的障紋。請潔淨我心眼，長留着愛的恩泉，清澈璀璨。
包 Sir， 你而家咧係一個蜘蛛俠啊咁。
佢係一個爬蟲類同埋兩棲類嘅權威。
國際上面咧係好知道 Father 啊，做好多研究啊，有啲物種直情係以 Father 係命名嘅，因為 Father 發現嘅咁樣。咁但係反而香港知道嘅咧人就唔多，咁我哋都希望想將呢一段嘅故事帶翻出嚟咯。
位於香港西環嘅聖類斯中學，除咗同大部分學校一樣有個生物實驗室俾同學上生物堂之外，更加特別嘅係佢哋藉住90週年校慶呢個機會，建立咗一個小小嘅生物博物館，展出各式各樣嘅動物標本，由昆蟲、魚類、兩棲類、爬行類、鳥類到哺乳類，以至人骨嘅標本都有收藏。
大部分嘅展品咧係響以前咧，佢響生物堂嗰陣時咧係佢教學嘅一啲作品嚟嘅。佢因為佢唔可以下下要帶我哋出去一啲環境裏邊去睇一啲動物，但係佢就會做咗呢啲標本翻嚟 show 俾我哋睇。
仲有一本手稿，將顯微鏡下嘅動植物細胞仔細咁畫咗出嚟，標記好每一個部分。
呢啲最主要係一啲植物同埋動物嘅一啲 slide， 呢啲 slide 咧我哋係睇過嘅。咁然後跟住呢啲就佢嘅 notes 啦，幫我哋去準備以前嘅高考生物科嘅考試。
聖類斯之所以會有呢啲為學生度身訂造嘅生物科教材，係因為一位老師包家天神父。包神父生於克羅地亞，喺2次大戰期間得到天主教慈幼會嘅照顧，可以返學讀書。佢喺1948年加入慈幼會，1958年晉鐸成為神父之後，被派遣到香港聖類斯中學服務。
We started a department of biology here, and they wanted a teacher, a priest, to teach biology because when you teach about living things, you have to teach about evolution, and evolution is a very tricky subject. Yeah, so they wanted a Catholic priest to teach about evolution, to give a Catholic interpretation.
於是年輕嘅包神父就被派到愛爾蘭嘅都柏林大學攻讀生物學士。
To study for the priesthood, we had to study Latin, and most of the names of specimens were Latin specimens, so it was very easy for me. I could learn very detailed parts. Yeah.
1968年，佢以1級榮譽畢業之後，返到香港聖類斯中學教預科同埋夜校嘅生物科。當學生嘅人數開始越嚟越多，生物實驗室亦隨之而需要擴大。不過因為買標本嘅價錢好貴，神父就決定自己整標本嚟做教材。
For instance, in the examination, they used to give just a limb like this, and the students had to describe it in detail and say whether it was left side or right side. So that's we made these models.
咁當年佢喺街咧就揾咗一隻死咗嘅狗，於是咧就搬咗去翻嚟學校啦，就將佢個頭切咗出嚟啦，咁啊整咗個狗嘅頭嘅標本咯。
So the most complicated one was the snake here. I had to keep it in a special solution to dissolve the muscle, but couldn't keep it too long in the solution, otherwise it would dissolve all the ligaments and all the pieces would come apart. So I had to sleep here in the laboratory for a few hours, and then use a toothbrush and scrape away the muscles, yeah, so that the ligaments will still be there to keep the bones together.
為咗揾唔同嘅物種嚟做標本，等學生更好咁學習生物科，包神父會一個人周圍去， 走勻香港嘅溪澗同埋叢林。
有時佢即係走到去長洲啊，有時去大嶼山啊等等咧，咁夜晚黑佢亦都會出去嚇，咁出去有時即係我哋會話落大雨，究竟你出咗做咩？咁佢話我今日我捉咗好多啲膠怪啊咁，即係對我嚟到講咧，有時即係夜晚黑我哋最怕就係嗰啲膠怪咧，即係嘈冤巴閉。我哋捉咗啲膠怪我嚟做乜嘢？佢捉住啲膠怪，佢話我嚟係要餵嗰啲蛇嘅。
神父亦都會帶埋學生一齊周圍揾小動物嘅蹤影。
有一日應該係禮拜六晏晝嚟嘅，咁我哋幾個同學跟佢就上咗去香港大學後山，上到去咧就發覺哇喺個溪澗啲水潭嗰度又揾到蝌蚪啊，又揾到青蛙啊，又揾到蜥蜴啊，咁最特別咧就見到一條蛇，一條水蛇咁大條到嘅，咁咧就將呢啲捉到嘅生物咧就攞翻去學校嗰個水族館嗰度，咁就養佢哋。咁就研究佢哋咯，跟住就開展咗一個影響我一生嘅歷程啦。
自此之後，每逢放假，神父都會帶佢哋去揾呢啲生物。劉博士形容，每一次喺野外通山走，都係令人興奮嘅經驗。
你唔會知道嗰一日會見到啲咩品種嘅，咁有可能係咩都見唔到嚇，亦都有可能同一日裏邊揾到好多以前未見過啊，或者啲稀有嘅品種啊咁咯。咁所以我嗰陣時好細個，雖然好細個咁，但係都Father帶我哋去咧，都會捉蛇嘅，眼鏡蛇啊、青竹蛇啊嗰啲都捉過嘅，咁亦都擺喺實驗室嗰度養。
有冇被咬過啊？
冇毒嘅就咬得都唔少嘅，咁但係有毒嘅咧，我會好小心嘅，因為我知道如果被毒蛇咬咗咧，咁我爸爸媽媽就應該會唔會再准我去再掂呢啲嘢㗎啦。
香港嘅生物種類相當豐富，而且品種好多，淨係青蛙就有20種，喺陸地生活嘅蛇有超過40種。不過喺當時70年代，關於香港兩棲爬行動物嘅資料非常之少，研究嘅人亦唔多。盧文先生呢，可以話係唯一一個。
好似我哋話揾到一條水蛇咧，咁阿 Father 就拎咗去俾 Mr. Roma 鑑定啦。咁啊，原來係一種都幾少有嘅蛇，叫做香港後靈蛇。因為佢條溪澗嗰度揾到，咪俾魚佢食啦，蝌蚪佢食啦，俾青蛙佢食啦，俾蝦啦、蟹啦，佢都唔食嘅。都應該個零禮拜後，即係乜嘢我哋諗到嘅試晒都唔肯食喎。咁啊，開始都有啲擔心。咁啊，但係唔知點解靈機一觸咧，就攞啲蚯蚓，佢就即刻開口食啦。咁所以我哋捉咗之後，我哋放喺實驗室嗰度養咧，其實就係一個透過觀察咧，亦都透過嘗試咧，其實係攞到好多第一手嘅資料。咁另外就係Father 都教我哋要記錄啦，因為你觀察咗咁，但係你唔記錄嘅話咧，可能呢啲資料會唔記得咗，係冇咗嘅。
呢啲種種經驗，除咗學到生物嘅知識，亦都讓佢喺神父身上學習到細心觀察同埋詳細記錄對科學研究嘅重要性。喺野外考察嘅過程中，神父更加多次發現到從未俾人發現過嘅生物。佢喺1987年喺喜靈洲發現嘅蜥蜴，日後更加係以佢嘅姓氏命名為包氏雙足蜥。
So we had to get special permission to go to Helingchau, and that's where I found the species. So we collected the specimens, and then it was sent to various specialists. Yeah, and eventually they found that it was a new species, so they named it after me.
即係一般人我哋一睇以為佢係一條蛇咯，或者一條蚯蚓，咁冇人諗過佢係一隻蜥蜴嚟嘅。咁啊 Father 就好細心啦。咁佢頭先講到佢去觀察動物嘅時候，佢好冷靜啦，好靜啦，亦都好強嘅觀察力咧。見到佢有2隻手，咁於是佢就覺得奇怪係佢係應該係未俾人發現過。
講到兩棲類，我哋通常都會諗到青蛙，原來仲有一種叫做香港裸螈，係香港唯一一種有尾嘅兩棲動物。
I found it in the Saigon Peninsula. We had to climb on top of the hill. It was an abandoned village. All the people had left. So there were a few streams there, and we were collecting specimens. And I found this species there, so I took it, brought it back home, and I sent it to the government to be identified. And it had not been named at that time, so that's why they named it Hongkonensis.
咁個肚嘅下邊咧，一個好特徵嚟就係好多花紋嘅，好有趣。佢多數喺嗰啲石間咧，嗰啲水底嗰啲石罅嗰度咧，捐嚟捐去揾嘢食嘅。而最後呢一隻咧叫尖舌浮蛙，佢喺世界其他地方俾人揾咗㗎啦，但係 Father 係第一個喺香港度揾到呢一隻嘅青蛙咯。咁之後都冇人見過㗎啦，因為即係呢隻青蛙咧，見到兩隻眼喺個頂嗰度咧，其實佢嗰個視野好狹窄。咁所以佢嗰個競爭嘅能力好低，好容易俾人食咗，就比較難揾啲啦。而家都
認識到大自然裡面咁多睇嚟微不足道，但又咁奇妙嘅生物，真係會令人思考佢哋到底喺邊度嚟，又有咩目的呢？
We have the process of evolution, things evolved.
因為 Father 佢係兩爬專家，咁喺進化論嚟講咧，咁即係首先有兩棲類啦。咁先至慢慢會進化到係陸地上生物嘅爬蟲類嘅動物嘅。即使我哋人類啦，即係我哋即係所有嘅結構啊，或者即係唔同嘅 system 啊，都係好完美地運作嘅。咁呢一個其實即係我哋可以話係一個進化過程，即係我哋都有時都會諗，咁係咪真係咁多年嘅進化，真係可以去到咁完美咧？有時候都會諗係咪有一個主宰
There must be an origin. And some people say things came out of nothing. But we find it very difficult to believe that something zero equal to one. You know, nothing becomes something. There must be a creator.
天主係即係好似一個總設計師咁樣，透過進化令到咁多奇妙嘅動植物一個大自然出咗嚟咧。
當城市化會導致到社會嘅所有嘅生物嘅種類越來越少，嘅生存空間要少嘅時候，你會睇到即係我哋應該要不遺餘力，無論為自己、為下一代，或者為我哋應該要同一啲生物係應該要和諧共存啦，亦都咧俾翻生物佢應該有嘅一份生存嘅機會同埋權利啦。
喺70年代中，由於神父嘅研究同貢獻，佢仲被香港市政局邀請出版香港兩棲爬行類嘅圖鑑。
咁佢哋嗰陣時都有揾Mr. Roma 盧文先生去寫呢一本書。咁嗰陣時應該係盧文先生佢退咗休，跟住翻咗英國。咁佢都諗住即係寫佢都好多標本好多資料。但係好唔好彩咧，佢就有重病啦，跟住好快就過咗身。市政局咧就亦都知道 Father 有同Mr. Roma 有聯繫啦，亦都做呢一方面嘅研究啦，咁所以就揾咗包神父去寫呢本書。
The government asked me to be in charge of the Hong Kong amphibians and reptiles collection, and so we started going around. And I had these two students, they were the school boys. They were helping me.
應承出書嘅時候咧，其實有啲呢啲嘅動物，我哋都自己都未見過、未揾過、冇相嘅。咁所以嗰陣時接咗手呢一樣咧，咁我哋咧就都花好多時間去將我哋未揾到過嘅物種咧，去盡量喺香港嗰度揾到佢出嚟，跟住可以影相啦，亦都可以攞多啲資料咁樣。咁但係其實主要執筆嗰個會係包神父啦，係啦，因為佢即係佢係老師嘛，嗰啲資料啊好有條理咁好整咗落嚟。
So all the pictures were taken here in the school. It would be very difficult to take pictures like this in a natural environment. I built up the background and put in the specimen and make sure it was in the right position, and then the laboratory assistants took a picture. Yeah. When it came to photographing poisonous snakes, that was different. See? Yeah. We had a section on venomous snakes like this one. This was a king cobra. He bit me. We needed a picture of a snake standing in its natural position like that. Yeah. So I had to frighten it. Yeah. And then he stood up and then he bit me here.
最後，佢哋喺1986年出版咗英文版嘅《香港兩棲類和爬行類》，記錄咗99種香港嘅青蛙、蛇、蜥蜴同烏龜。
好彩就係出咗呢本書之後咧，咁亦都帶動到多啲人有興趣啦。咁我哋亦都係繼續做研究啦。咁所以都有啲好多新嘅發現啊，揾到啲新嘅記錄或者新嘅品種嘅。咁到1998年咧，就我哋出咗第2版啦。咁而裏邊嘅資料亦都係豐富咗啦。包括埋有一啲係外來引入嘅品種啊，或者有一啲喺香港揾到，但係都唔能夠100%肯定係咪人放抑或原生嘅咧，我哋都裏邊記錄到有成111種嘅。
We were the only ones who made a complete study of the reptiles in the southern China. Yeah. And the publication became well known. And they sent copies to all the various museums all over the world. Yeah. The United States, Europe, Australia. Yeah. So we became well known as collectors. Yeah. And I had a lot of letters and interviews from various specialists. They were coming to Hong Kong, yeah. So they came to see me.
咁但係出本書嘅時候咧，你會發覺咧，佢咧就係第3作者嚟嘅。其實咧就係應該佢係用嘅時間同埋精力最多嘅嚇，只不過佢係好謙虛啦。咁同埋我諗佢係想將呢一啲嘅機會俾阿 Steve Carson 同埋俾我啦，咁所以佢就堅持佢係第3作者咯。
This was published by the government. They wanted a person in authority to give value to the book. So they asked me to add my name. But originally I didn't use my name. It's an honor for the school, not for me personally. As a member of religious orders, we're not supposed to stand out. Yeah, we have to keep very low and humble.
神父呢份認真同謙遜，深深咁影響咗一代又一代嘅學生。劉慧寧博士而家係世界自然基金會香港分會嘅濕地保育總監，佢最為人津津樂道嘅，莫過於佢拯救盧氏小樹蛙嘅故事啦。當年喺赤鱲角機場嘅時候，其中一個最受關注嘅環保問題就係島上面嘅盧氏小樹蛙點算？於是佢加入咗香港大學，研究呢一種香港獨有而且細到可以企喺手指上面嘅樹蛙。經過統計同研究，最終成功拯救咗230隻成蛙，仲有幼蛙、蝌蚪同卵，揀咗幾個合適嘅地點，將佢哋放歸野外，為保育香港嘅生態作出咗重要嘅貢獻。
佢係我嘅啟蒙老師啦，即係帶我入咗去一個大自然咁奇妙嘅世界嗰度啦。咁變咗嗰個方向就基本上冇改變㗎。我讀大學或者做嘢或者做研究都係朝住呢個方向去咯。
過咗咁多年之後，劉博士仍然會不時返去聖類斯度探神父。
Hello, Father. How are you? So, how is your Chinese New Year? I got some chocolate for you. Share with your friends.
Things to you.
No. I got plenty. That means the Chinese way and some apples. Yeah. I'll just leave it here. So you can share with the staff and with 珍姐。通常都係過年啦，咁會嚟同 Father 拜年啦。巴神父係我個恩師啦，咁影響好大嘅，即係無論喺事業上邊啊，或者做人上邊啊，神父對我嘅影響都好大嘅。
Father 咧係教我中6、中7，即係 A level 入 U 嘅生物科嘅。佢做事咧好認真嘅。佢即係你睇到佢嘅作品同埋所做嘅嘢咧，即係佢要我哋咧，譬如字要寫得好靚啦，畫嗰啲圖咧係唔可以有好多嘅痕跡會俾考官或者評核員去扣分嘅。
Students were drawing things like this, which is meaningless. So I told him, instead of drawing things like that, they should draw it. Just draw the main, make shape, and then take a few specimens and draw them very accurately. That was knowledge, simple and clear.
所以我哋嗰屆差唔多喺30個同學裏邊咧，大概有10個到咯，係讀醫嘅，都基本上好大程度上係因為受住 Father 嘅影響，因為佢教bio啦，然後佢響嗰度嘅認真啊，咁所以喺某程度上咧，其實係我覺得 Father 嗰份處事同埋做嘢嗰份態度嘅專注同埋認真，影響緊我哋，亦都對我哋而家嘅工作咧不生受用。
陳 Sir 亦都係聖類斯嘅舊生，而家喺母校教生物科，亦都上緊舞蹈班，準備領洗成為天主教徒。
我中3就冇機會俾阿 Father Bugatti 教過嘅，即係咁多年以嚟，即使我去到中6畢業咧，我都即係見過佢喺走廊度行啦。咁我都覺得佢係一個普通嘅老人家，行嚟行去行嚟去，其實我都唔係太過認識佢嘅。咁直至我到我去咗學校，即係去咗大學啦，讀緊Biodiversity，咁嗰個 lecturer 咧就無端端介紹一啲嘅爬蟲類咧，就介紹咗阿 Father 個名。咁嗰一刻我先知道，哎呀，原來我讀咗咁多年學校，原來我都唔知道阿 Father Bugatti 係咁犀利嘅。咁到我翻嚟嘅時候，其實都好想即係趁住呢個一個機會去俾多啲學生去認識佢咯。
雖然神父已經退咗休，但佢嘅教材仍然喺今日嘅生物堂扮演住好重要嘅角色。
呢個我就印象深刻啲，因為我平時上堂都會介紹翻俾啲學生聽，即係呢個係肉食性嘅動物咧，啲牙齒嘅結構啊、個分佈啊、個形態啊，咁都係幾深刻印象啊，俾佢哋一個。
So the Father, I always show these 2 pages to all the students. Very useful.
Yeah.
Because they always make this same mistake.
喺我個教學嗰個理念度咧，我都希望即係可以做得更加好啲啦，嚟到成全佢咁耐以嚟所教嘅嘢嘅。
時至今日，即使已經退休，神父依然會成日翻到去佢最熟悉嘅生物室。
譬如上生物堂，因為呢個係佢畢生嘅 commitment 咯，可以話見到學生需要幫忙嘅時候，佢會有份心火，佢都重執教鞭去指導翻啲學生，即係真係退而不休。然後佢嗰份對嗰份事件嘅執着同埋認真咧，真係好令你佩服。
譬如解剖老鼠啊、劏下豬心啊，佢都會過嚟。因為啲學生咧好驚，又話啊要戴手套咁 Father 咧就唔會，佢一嘢就已經用徒手打落去啦。呢嚿係腸，呢個咧係個胃，呢個係個肺，咁啲學生就好 amazing 咁樣咯。咁真係學到嘢咯，學生。
2018年係聖類斯中學嘅90週年校慶，學校決定將呢啲標本公開展出，等更多人有機會欣賞到神父嘅作品，佢嘅細心同謙虛嘅精神。亦都讓同學可以認識學校嘅故事。
包神父喺香港，無論係生物學嘅研究嗰度啦，或者係喺教一啲學生嗰方面咧 ，Father 貢獻係相當大嘅。我覺得係有需要將呢一段咁光輝嘅歷史係再令到至少學校嘅師生要知道啦。咁亦都係譬如包神父對香港兩棲爬蟲類嘅研究嗰方面咧，其實亦都係希望其他香港人啊嗰啲都知道。
慈幼會接辦呢間嘅聖類斯嘅學校。咁都已經90年咯，我哋都希望即係能夠係繼往開來同埋咧能夠係有一個新嘅一個領域喺度，同翻毗鄰嘅所有嘅學校大家即係會話，大家我哋可以去觀摩啊，大家可以去參觀啊，大家可以係去睇下我哋可以係繼續喺呢方面有啲咩發展咧咁樣。
喺2016年，包神父嘅名再次被用嚟命名佢發現嘅一種蜘蛛。
喺宣佈咗之後咧， 咁我都喺翻我哋會士中間，我哋有時我都會休佢一默嘅。咁我話好啊，阿包 Sir，你而家咧係一個蜘蛛俠啊咁樣。佢咧就即係唔認嘅，我唔係一個 Spiderman 嚇。咁佢好謙嘅，真係好謙嘅。
有人諗過用 Father Bogardek 描詩人咁，但係阿 Father 佢性格咧就好 humble 啦，即係佢覺得呢啲嘢係應該屬於聖類斯嘅，就唔係屬於佢一個嘅。最後用咗 SLS Biology 描詩人，呢個係佢個 nickname 嚟嘅。佢成日都叫自己做 A.B， 咁可以見到有個簽名呢度，成日話自己係隻蜜蜂仔。不過有時咧 Father 咧都會覺得做乜擺咗佢個名上嚟？係啊，佢話佢個名應該擺喺個最低嗰啲地方，見唔到嘅地方咁樣。
I was learning from students. Yeah, I had very little to give, honestly. Yeah.
You're always so humble.
Yeah, I was not the expert. Yeah, the students were collecting things, and I took them to the experts. The experts identified them, then I passed on the information to them. And that's how things developed. Yeah. Yeah,
It's a lot more than that.
Is there? Yeah.
Yes,
I can't remember them. My mind is fading.
包神父嘅一生，由成為神父嚟到香港，再去愛爾蘭讀生物，翻嚟之後一生喺學校教育服務學生。佢攀山涉水咁揾動物、整標本、出書，背後嘅原因，除咗係因為對天主嘅創造充滿興趣，更加係為咗學生嘅學習同埋前途。雖然佢有卓越嘅成就，又教育出好多傑出嘅人才，但佢完全冇將呢啲榮譽歸功於自己，只係一心為咗學生嘅益處。佢獻身於造福同教育青年，正正活出咗慈幼會會祖聖若望鮑思高神父嘅精神。
佢讀過神學，亦都全職為天主教會工作，但係對自己嘅召叫就感到疑惑。
我覺得好空虛嘅人，空虛就話我要成為乜嘢人呢？將來我會點呢？
其他人去日本係為咗旅遊，佢去日本就係為咗聽天主嘅聲音，
同主好近，聽個聲音好清楚，個聲音清楚咧係使我心唔再煩亂，好安定。
Andrew 林康正最終點樣揾到佢嘅召叫呢？請留意呢一個星期嘅愛常傳。
睇完呢一集愛常傳，歡迎大家打我哋嘅熱線電話嚟分享一下你嘅感受或者故事，同時亦請收聽我哋逢星期六嘅電台節目愛生命。要購買天主教書籍同信仰靈修禮品，請嚟我哋嘅生命恩泉書社參觀選購。我哋下星期同樣時間再見，天主保佑。